Hi folks, I'm Greg Boyd and this is
Jessica Kelley.
And we're here today because we're going to talk about Jessica Kelley and her new book, Lord Willing, Wrestling with God's Role in My Child's Death. I want to say right out of the gate, I want to say this to you too, that I got this version, I got a version of your book early because I was proofreading it, and Shelley and I were heading up to a cabin, and she likes me to read to her when we're driving someplace. And so I tried to read this to Shelley, and I got through about 3 sentences in the introduction, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I could not do it. I would just, and it's because I got so choked up. You have a way of writing that is just as gripping as anything I've ever encountered in my life. It just reaches in there, and you bring people into your experience, and it's gut-wrenching. At the same time, I've never read, and she's not paying me to endorse this one. Right? I mean, she's making millions. I'm not asking for a cent. This is all free. But I've never seen such a combination of a book that hits, on the one hand, hits so hard emotionally, and then you come back and you are just asking these deep, profound questions and wrestling with theology. And that heart and mind dynamic makes this, I think, a one-of-a-kind book. So I want to congratulate you on doing an outstanding job.
Thank you.
That was just... When I first talked to Jessica, and I'm going to give you a chance to talk on these at some point in here.
That's fine.
But we had a phone conversation. Do you remember that?
Yes.
We were talking about you wanted me to do a eulogy for your son's funeral, and just the way you were articulating things there. I remember I asked you, are you a writer or something? Because you're so articulate. And so I'm so happy to see this coming out of this is. Another example of God bringing good out of tragedy.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's start by, there may be some who are viewing this who don't know the background to this book.
Sure.
Tell a little bit of your story, if you would.
Well, in 2012, my husband and I found out that our 4-year-old son, Henry, had a malignant brain tumor. And so we got Henry's diagnosis in September, and then he was gone before Christmas.
Wow, so you have 4 months.
A little less than 3 months. So it was really sudden and surreal. And one minute we're planning his future and making plans for all the things we're going to do for his education and family vacation. And the next minute we're planning a funeral. So I think the reason the book
I can't imagine what that'd be like.
Yeah. I think it's intense because that was an intense experience, and the theology that I write about is not a theology that I lived in the abstract or the academic.
No, not at all.
It was a rubber meets the road. And
what were some of the symptoms that you saw with Henry that led you to take him to the doctor?
Yeah, so the year before his diagnosis, we noticed some little things, but they weren't alarming. They were just a lot of little things, like a lot of ear infections. And so we were getting him on antibiotics to help with the ear infections. But that seemed to hurt his appetite, it seemed to kill his appetite. So all of a sudden, he's not gaining weight. And he's kind of moody. But when he's got ear infections and you're on antibiotics, it makes sense if you're not gaining weight. It makes sense if you're moody. Then he starts with stomach viruses on top of that. And so the doctors are saying, you guys just need to catch a break. You need to get to spring. You've just caught all these things, and it's this compounding effect. And then he starts to tremble a little bit. And so
that's terrible to see.
Well, we thought it was low blood sugar when you're not eating and you're sick. And sometimes I get shaky if I haven't eaten in a while. So we thought, well, it's low blood sugar. But man, we just got to get to spring. So the ear infections will clear up, and the stomach viruses will clear up, and the appetite will return, and the mood will improve. But instead of things getting better, they just continued to get worse. And then it was on a Monday, I think in mid-September of 2012, when we took him back to the doctor. And the doctor looked at him when he walked in. He kind of looked at me puzzled, like, he looks okay. What do you mean he's trembling more? And we got a stool out, and we put it on the floor. And we said, Henry, step up on the stool. That was our little 4-year-old's name, was Henry. He said, step up on the stool. And he stepped up on the stool, and he couldn't make it. I had to reach out and grab him. And just a lump went into my throat, and it just stayed for like a week because the doctor suddenly understood, okay, this is significant. So he said, let's get some autoimmune testing done. Maybe let's do some more blood work. At this point, all the blood work had come back clear. He said, let's do some more. If it's autoimmune, maybe there's a cure, and we just need to address it. And you know what? Let's just get him on the books with the neurologist just to be safe. Just to kind of, maybe he's got a pinched nerve in his spine, but so maybe we'll do an MRI there, but maybe a neurologist. Let's just do some tests. So that was Monday. But by Friday, he couldn't even cross the playground equipment at our local playground. And our 2-year-old daughter, she just blew past him on the playground. And I thought it looked so extraordinary, and it was so average. But he had just deteriorated at this point where he couldn't even keep up with his sister. So we finally went to the Children's Hospital emergency room on that Friday, and they put us in a room pretty quick. When you have a child shaking, they put us in a room pretty quick. But it was 6 hours later, around midnight, when a neurosurgeon was paged to come and speak to us.
Wow.
And the nurses said, we're going to stay with him and you go down the hall. And so this is after midnight, and the chief neurosurgeon has been paged to the hospital on a Friday, and the nurses want to give you privacy to go talk to him. So that was a long walk down the hall to see that neurosurgeon. And when a neurosurgeon of 20 years has tears in his eyes,
yeah, you know you're in trouble.
You know your life's about to change.
Is that the point where you're describing noticing the tile on the floor of the room at his office?
In the book?
Yeah, you're so descriptive about that. I felt like I was there. Yeah, you know, the way you just talk about how your mind just kind of vacates, and you start to like notice details in the room. Like the moment gets frozen.
Yeah, no, that was, so in the moment we learned that he had a malignant brain tumor, or it was a brain tumor. It was a large brain tumor. We didn't know if it was malignant or benign, or if they'd be able to get it all. But we knew it was large and that we needed to do surgery right away. So he said, we need to get him well, folks. We need to get him well. And I was like, yeah, let's get him well. Let's get him well and get him home. And, you know, it's not good news. It's very bad news, but at least everybody here is concerned. And we have a diagnosis, and we have now a treatment plan. Let's get him well. Let's have surgery and take him home.
Yeah.
And so that was Tuesday that you're talking about, is that we spent the entire day Tuesday. People were coming to the hospital. People were paying attention on Facebook and social media, and we were posting updates. And he had a 6 to 8 hour craniotomy.
Wow.
Every time, they called once an hour from the OR. Every time my phone rang, I almost dropped it and threw up on it. I mean, it was, it was like, what are they going to say? Every time it was calm and reassuring. But the whole day, we're all praying, okay, guys, they got it all, and it's benign. That's what we're going to hear. So everybody pray for that. They got it all, it's benign. So everybody's, all day long, they got it all, it's benign. They got it all, it's benign. Well, we found out it was 6 hours later that the surgeon called us all up to meet, or he called my husband and I up to meet. So the whole family goes upstairs, and the family goes into the little waiting room, and we're out in the hallway. And so they're watching through the window, and they can't hear what's going on. They just see us, and they see us meet with the surgeon, and they see us nod, and they see us hug, and they see us stand there in silence. And then they hear us come in, and they're all staring at us, and we take our place in the circle in the family waiting room, and I can't even look at their faces. But I can hear their thoughts. They got it all, it's benign. They got it all, it's benign. And I'm just staring at a tile. There's there's one tile in front of me, and it's got very straight and firm boundaries. It's very orderly. And if I don't take my eyes off of it, then maybe I won't have to admit that they didn't get it all. They only got 50%. And he started.
I remember that.
Yeah.
That's brutal.
Yeah, he got 50%, and then he started bleeding to the point where he lost 3 liters of blood, and they had to fill, that's enough to fill a 4-year-old's body. So they had to, a complete transfusion, and then it wasn't benign, it was malignant and highly aggressive. So that's where the tile came in, and from there, we had some really hard decisions to make. From there, we had to meet with the surgeon and find out what are our options. I mean, he's only 4. He's only a couple months past 4, so you don't have the same litany of options that you do if you're 12 or you're 20. The options are not the same. It was also very rare and a very aggressive tumor. So
what were the options?
So the options were a very experimental, aggressive treatment that would be pretty grueling and brutal for him to go through. Or to bring him home with hospice care were basically our options. And so we talked to professionals, and we prayed, and we discussed, and we researched, and we did everything we could think we could do in this situation. And in the end, the only option that we had peace with was getting him some rehab from the very traumatic brain surgery to help him learn to walk again, and to bring him home with hospice care.
Yeah.
And I told his neurosurgeon the next day what we had decided, and he said, I wish I could disagree. He said, I wish I could tell you to keep fighting.
Yeah.
He said, but I can't. And this is what I would want in his situation. And you're giving him the chance to come home with dignity and be surrounded by family and friends and to be in his family's home.
Those are the toughest decisions in the world.
Yeah.
You have a quality of life, you know, so he can have the last several months of his life,
Yes.
you know, as normal as possible and as much joy as possible.
Yeah.
Or you put him through hell
Yeah.
with very little chance of any that he's going to make it out, which means the rest of his life's going to be like miserable. Because that therapy just kills you.
A very low survival rate regardless.
Yeah.
And so it was sort of owning up to that and being really frank about that and then just trying to do for him what we would want done for us.
For hospice care. Then you were what as I think one of the most devastating chapters in history. It was Frosty the Snowman.
Oh yeah.
That was, I didn't know what to ask about that other than tell us about Frosty the Snowman. The way you laid that out was brilliant. Every stanza, was related to something in Henry's life.
Yeah.
Can you just, kind of abbreviate away, share like Frosty the Snowman?
So Henry loved Christmas. That was his favorite holiday. And so even though it was October and in Georgia very warm, we decorated the house with the big 10-foot Christmas tree and we opened presents and we did Christmas in October as soon as we brought him home. And we had Christmas carols and Christmas classics playing on the TV. And so Frosty the Snowman was one of those classics that was on the TV. And my husband and I joked because we realized how much he was like Frosty because he was bumbling around. He's on painkillers and he's on medicine. He's recovering from surgery. So he's kind of bumbling around. He's gained a lot of weight from these steroids and being in bed all the time. So he's just kind of knocking over lamps and walking into walls, but he's got this sort of twinkle in his eye and this goofy little personality because he was just the sweetest kid. And so, we did Christmas and the news, it was, I think, Halloween a few days later, and the news did a story on him, and they called it Henry's Last Holidays. And I took a gasp when I saw that headline because I think I was still hoping and praying for a miracle and not really facing where we were and the likelihood that he was going to die before any more holidays came. And I remember thinking, our little Frosty's not made of snow. Like, well, he might be here and they might run another story next Halloween about how he's still here.
Right.
But yeah, we only had about 8 weeks with him when we were home before he passed.
Well, that was fast. Come on, let's run and have some fun.
Yeah, before I melt away.
That was brutal.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this: at what point did you? It has to be at some point where you let go of hope.
Yeah.
And you just accept.
Yeah.
What point did that happen?
Yeah, because when we first brought him home, he's recovering from brain surgery. And so every day he seems a little stronger, a little more agile. He starts to run and play with Miriam again. He starts to the medicines are working and he's eating more. And so he's gaining weight and he looks better than he has in a while. He grows. He starts to grow. You don't expect a child with a malignant brain tumor who's on hospice care to grow.
Yeah.
No, he got taller, he got bigger. I had to get him new clothes and stuff. And so we were thinking maybe.
Yeah, things looking normal.
Maybe, because we had people come and pray. We had people in a big circle around the backyard, walking around the house. We had thousands praying online, and we were like, maybe, maybe it's a miracle. I know, and he hadn't had any trembling since we brought him home from the hospital, because when they did the surgery and they let the pressure off his brain, then he didn't tremble anymore because that was caused from the pressure in his brain. But I remember one morning waking up and we got coffee and we're watching Christmas carols and the tree's lit, and he reaches for a sippy cup and he's trembling. And it was like, I looked at my husband and he was like, I see it too. And that's when we knew, like, he's not going to pull through this. He's going to die. Henry's going to die. And that was the moment when that trembling returned.
And how long was that before the end?
I want to say, I don't know, if weeks, not a super long time.
Right.
Yeah.
One final thing is, we just share a little bit about that, your last moment with him, the bath.
Oh, yeah. Well, that last day, because all he did up until that point, he would run or he would sleep. So he's a 4-year-old. So even with a malignant brain tumor, even on painkillers and neuropathy meds and everything else, he would run or he would sleep. And that last day, he didn't want to get out of bed. he wasn't going to run anymore. And I wasn't content to let him lay there. I wanted to give him another bath. I just needed him to have a bath. So I got my dad to help me put him in the tub and wash him one last time. I wanted him to die clean and to smell like the lavender baby lotion that I'd put him on since he was a baby.
Yeah.
And I wanted to lift him up, and I wanted to smell him and feel him and know that he was cared for. And so his last words that day were, "I love you." But he was, if you've ever been around someone in their last hours, their strength is fading and their voice is crackly.
Yeah,
and so it was like, "I love you." It was really strange. And then he went to sleep. But then a few hours later, he surprised everybody because he sat up and he said with this perfect strength and clarity, he said, "Oh, that sounds like fun." And then that was all for him. But I like to think that in those moments, he was looking at an eternity of love and fun and things he couldn't do anymore.
Yeah. I've heard that so often. People, the last thing they say is something like, "I can hear him," or you know, "I'm glad to be here," or "Thank you." They're like talking to somebody.
Yeah.
And sometimes even say names of people that you know have passed away.
Yeah.
I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
I mean, what was that? What was it in response to? What did Jesus just
What
suggest
did
to
he?
him?
Right. Well, with how much Play-Doh was out on the table that
Yeah,
he could dive into.
You know, the thing that I think most traumatizes people when they lose a loved one, especially a child, is that in their mind the narrative stops at death. And I always encourage people who are staying in a trauma to like run out the narrative, like don't stop there. In fact, all fear that people have, it's because the story they run in their head, it stops with the worst case scenario, it stops with the tragedy, it stops with the loss.
Right.
But if you can extend it on, then that gives relief. What kind of story do you imagine about Henry?
Oh, I don't know. I like to imagine him busy. And I like to imagine him missing us, but not sad. You know, anticipating, sort of an anticipating.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
That's good.